From the News Channel 5 Network, this is Inside Politics.
Hello, everyone. I'm News Channel 5's political analyst, Pat Nolan. Welcome to Inside Politics. Tennessee politics leading up to the 2018 elections got a bit scrambled this week with the announcement by Senator Bob Corker that he will not be seeking re-election. That not only has set off a lot of speculation about who will be our next senator, but also the possibility of a ripple effect throughout the 2018 field of candidates from top to bottom for local, state, and federal ballots. Here to give us their inside knowledge and put all these developments into perspective, our conservative Republican analyst Steve Gill and Democrat Larry Woods. Gentlemen, thank you for joining us on a most interesting week.
It's a fun week.
Now, Senator Corker's decision, it came as a shock to many, but maybe for some of us just a mild surprise, because he obviously was publicly struggling about what to do for several weeks, and he was showing it when he talked about it.
Yeah, for a long-term incumbent like Senator Corker to be talking for several months about I'm undecided or I'm having to think about it, that was a clear signal that something was going on, but it was still quite a surprise to hear the announcement.
Now Steve, he, in his retirement statement, he did not use what you thought you might hear, well, I want to spend more time with my family, but he did sort of indicate that he never thought he'd serve longer than 2 terms, although that got tougher to think about once he became chairman of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. Are you buying what explanation there is in that retirement statement?
I think he was looking at polls. I mean, you've seen consistent polls that had him in the low 40s in terms of re-elect numbers. His polls internally and others. So he might not have gotten re-elected. It was going to be a tough race. And then I think when he saw what was happening, both in the lead up to and then the result in Alabama with Luther Strange versus Roy Moore, Luther Strange and his advocates spent $30 million to try and retain a Senate seat in Alabama and got beat by almost double digits.
And
Donald Trump came in and campaigned for him.
Was the majority.
And Donald Trump campaigned for him. And when you couldn't even get Donald Trump to carry the Donald Trump people across the finish line for you, I think Bob Corker saw the handwriting on the wall of what if Donald Trump comes in against me and they spend $20 million against me. So I think he was looking at exit polls there as well.
But there's another possibility there. Yes, I agree with you. I think if Corker had run for re-election against one other substantial Republican, he could have lost and been beaten. But if I'm Bob Corker, I'm thinking, if I wait till next spring and jump into the Republican primary for governor, where there'll be, what, 6 of us running, I only need 30% of the vote to get that nomination.
I think the problem with that, though, is that he had $7 million in his account, $2 million in a super in his leadership PAC, another $1 million or so in a super PAC. He was flush with cash for a Senate race. He can't move any of that money to a state race, so he would start again from scratch and have to spend his own money against people who have plenty to spend. I will say I was surprised a little bit at the timing for Corker. He didn't announce 6 years ago until about 6 weeks or 8 weeks before the qualifying deadline, which would have been around February of this time. And I think because of his foreign relations position, he's in the thick of things with China, North Korea, the Middle East, Russia. He's a little bit of a lame duck now. And again, he's going to use the pitch of now I can focus on my job, but you have less clout when everybody's thinking who's going to fill your seat.
But one other thing, gentlemen, to look at, Washington's gotten to be a crazier and crazier place, particularly in the last couple of years. Did he perhaps decide that enough of that, I don't want another 6 years of this?
Doesn't look like a fun job to me.
Washington is sick. Both parties. Washington is sick. They don't pay attention to us, the everyday people in America. I think the entire nation feels disenfranchised to a large degree, and therefore people like Corker, who are trying to do it right, really feel pressure.
Larry, primary challenges are the big fight in both parties, and I think obviously you're seeing it. You saw it in Alabama, you're going to see it in Arizona, Nevada, Mississippi, you were going to see it in Tennessee, as all those incumbent Republican senators are going to be challenged strongly from the right in their own party. And then in California, Dianne Feinstein with the DACA Dreamers decision simply said there were legal questions about whether doing it by executive order was the right way. It was going to be challenged successfully, and then all of a sudden they were saying they were going to challenge her in a primary from the left. So both sides are being pulled further apart by their own party.
But it's different in Tennessee because unlike Alabama, we don't have a runoff law in primaries, and that means whoever gets the most votes wins. And that could be a big calculation in people deciding, and we'll talk about this in the next segment, who's running, but people will look on the size of the primary field could get to be really important.
Moderates have won in Tennessee in Republican primaries when you've had a moderate and 2 or 3 conservatives. And I think what Bob Corker was trying to calculate is, do I have a couple of of well-funded conservatives. And I think when we look at this race, and we'll talk a little bit more, is do you see one strong conservative run that kind of coalesces and then leave others by the wayside?
Larry, do you think Steve Bannon's already putting Bob Corker's scalp up on his wall for making the changes up there? I would certainly think he would be looking for the opportunity to do that.
Washington, and Steve Bannon's part of the Washington establishment of the last couple of years. Yeah, they're great putting scalps up, whether they really earn the scalp or not. I'm sure Bannon's already telling everybody, I forced Corker out.
Well, and look at Breitbart, because in the last 48 hours since the Corker race ended with Corker and talk turned to Governor Haslam, you've seen 3, 4, or 5 anti-Haslam stories in Breitbart already, and that's going to continue.
What about the idea that President Trump played some role in it? He did one bad tweet against Bob Corker, and 3 weeks later he's out of the race. Now, I suspect they all claim they're good buddies with each other, but are they?
Well, it was more than a tweet. Early on, you had Bob Corker make a comment that Donald Trump's administration was in a downward spiral and out of control.
Struck back was with the tweet.
And then came with a tweet after Bob Corker had taken another shot at him. We did Tennessee Star did a poll in June that found that those kinds of anti-Trump comments by Corker drove his own supporters away from him. And that anti-Trump attitude in Tennessee, where he carried 92 out of 95 counties, where he still in a Republican primary has 85% approval, being anti-Trump is not going to bode well for a Corker or for a Bill Haslam.
Now, the Alabama primary runoff this past week was clearly ground zero of what appears to be a Republican civil war that's going on. Is that Republican civil war coming here next year?
I think so. Again, we got to wait and see who's in. But again, if you've got a Marsha Blackburn versus Bill Haslam Senate race, you're going to see Bannon, Breitbart, you're going to see Americans for Prosperity, you're going to see Senate Club for Growth, you're going to see all sorts of outside groups put a lot of money behind Marsha Blackburn against Bill Haslam. So that same inter-party split is going to play out here. You may see it in congressional races. You'll definitely see it in the governor's race.
Well, you've got 3 congressional seats open in Tennessee. That's pretty rare. Do you see President Trump getting involved, particularly in the Senate race? Will somebody talk him into endorsing a candidate as somebody talked him into endorsing the wrong candidate it turned out in Alabama?
Again, it's early, so we got to see who's in.
He's going to be on that tweet in every possible form and opportunity.
So he's a threat, like
Sure.
Frank Clement used to say, I'm a threat for every vacant office.
And unfortunately,
smartphone, he's a threat.
Different than when Steve and I say to our friends who are in office, I'll either be for you or against you, whichever you want. Trump will be both in most of these elections.
Let's take a break. Larry Woods, Democratic strategist, and Steve Gill, Republican strategist. We're talking about all the developments around this week's decision by Senator Corker to retire from office. Back to continue this conversation about who will be the candidates after this break.